is really for agencies and those seeking power to obtain power and control and tax money. And they don't give a damn if they cripple the environment. And there are very few people who would be considered a hero of the environment by Time Magazine who are actually telling the truth. And one of them happens to be a best-selling author. You might have heard of two of his books, San Francisco and Apocalypse Never. He has an organization, he's the founder and president of Environmental Progress, real environmental progress, the truth, nuclear. I love it so much it hurts my feelings, so let's hear it for author and legend Michael Shellenberger.
Good morning, everybody. Come on, guys. You guys ready to talk about energy? Yeah, let's do it. All right. Welcome. Well, let's get into it, guys. We're just going to start the conversation. We only have 25 minutes, and we got a big topic. A year ago, we were all worried that we were not going to have enough natural gas, in particular, to support our allies in Europe. Here we are, a year later, abundant oil and gas. It appears that the oil and gas industry has responded in a big way. Or is it just that Europe had a warm winter, they didn't need to use as much oil and gas? Who wants to start off? Are we dealing with just the amazing response from American oil and gas producers, or are we dealing with soft demand? What's going on? Who wants to take it? Yeah?
I'll take it, sure, yeah.
And introduce yourself before you start.
I'm Eric Rice, Chief Growth Officer with King Operating in Dallas. I think if you look at what's happening right now, it's definitely been a response. I think every one of us in this panel here are working 15, 18, 20-hour days, working on vacation. You know, we had a Zoom, people are on vacation still working because we see the importance. You know, right now, the supply issue, when you eliminate pipelines, you eliminate tracking, right? So getting rid of the pipelines right off the bat, we're trucking a lot of stuff, a lot of people are. But we also have very disparate opinions on what's happening with information. Kind of like similar to our jobs report, where you can look at the jobs report and there's a 1 in 16,000 chance they beat their estimates. It's pretty much the same with supply and demand. But American producers are stepping up right now, and they need to, as we enter into a technological phase that none of us have ever seen before. You know, when you get into AI and all the information war that we find ourselves in, that is predicated on energy. So without American producers stepping up, we'd be in a much, much different position.
And John, do you think that, did we panic last year? You know, oil and gas prices, you know, the stock prices went way up. It felt like Europe really I wrote a ton of columns about the need to step up oil and gas production. Did we overreact, or was that an appropriate response, and where are we now?
John Engel with Gulf Coast Western. No, I don't think there was an overreaction. I think it was more of a balanced approach that the industry took, because you had COVID that came out of nowhere, and you know, if you looked at what the rig count was before COVID, and then pretty much all drilling stopped because you had all this oil flowing to your processing plants, but no one buying the gasoline that was, or the other products, because COVID shut the economy down. So when the economy picked back up, all of the operators and everyone in the industry is like, okay, we're not going to go out just because oil prices bounced up. We're not going to go out and just drill. We're going to go and just have a measured approach so that we can bring on the demand as it's needed, but we're not going to put ourselves in that same position where you have the bottom taken out from under you and you have to react that way, because it was very bad for the industry. But in the same light, it made the industry much more efficient, because all those cutbacks, the companies got very, much more streamlined and more efficient with their costs in drilling and bringing the product to market.
So Dan, in President Biden's State of the Union, he said that we may need to use oil for another 10 years or so. But I don't think he meant it as a laugh line, but he got a bunch of laughs for it. But even this conference this panel is called "The Future of Energy is 2030, the End of Petroleum." So are we going to run out of petroleum by 2030? Are we going to stop using it? That's only 7 years away, if my math is correct. So where are we? What is this? Are we running out of oil? Are we going to stop using it?
That's a great question, and ironically enough, I actually get asked that more often than you'd think. First of all, my name is Dan Sauer. I have a company, President and CEO of Vertical Petroleum Industries. Live just about an hour and a half north of Dallas, Texas, up in Oklahoma. To answer the question, I'll start with this. First of all, when Biden got elected, being in the oil industry, you couldn't help but, wonder what's going to happen. We were pretty oil friendly throughout the last administration. I'm a big fan of Donald Trump and what he did for the industry. Biden got elected and he literally waged war, as you can all remember. The first thing he did is he shut down the pipeline. He decided to no drilling on federal land, which is going to have a huge impact. I never realized that what he was going to do for my individual company was going to turn my company from about a $2-3 million company to about a $30 million company. The reason why is because of what that did to the oil prices, and that's not necessarily good. It's the perception of what has happened is probably more important. I take a little different approach than most of the gentlemen on the stage here. Most of these guys know a tremendous more about the production of oil and oil or the future of oil, probably more than I. I started the company because I was an investor in oil and gas. And I had invested in projects with companies like these gentlemen right here, and I had done okay. And I had the opportunity to purchase a lease. Didn't even know what that meant at the time, and I bought one, and it did very well. And then I brought some partners in. We did another one. All of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm up to my eyeballs in the oil and gas business. I'm not from that background. I'm not a petroleum engineer or a geologist, but I surround myself with some guys, and we've been able to do extremely well. Finally, to answer that question, I will say, oil's not going anywhere. I can tell you right now, it's not about green energy. It's not about the left saying, we're going to wage war. It's literally not going anywhere because it's in our everyday life. It's in thousands of products that we use every day. We need oil. And so, to answer your question, oil's not going anywhere, regardless of the perception.
Well, sure, but if you read the New York Times, you read the Washington Post, you listen to the automakers, RJ, they are saying, look, we're all going electric. They're converting their assembly lines. Isn't it just a matter of time before we make the switch from petroleum to lithium?
Hello, my name is RJ Burr with PanX. Really, right now we're all looking at one trigger and one thing, and when it was a convergence of things happening over the last handful of years that came to right now. I mean, we call it the converging of the 6 factors. And you have one is the product, oil. 6,000 products made from one barrel. It's ingrained in everybody's life. The modern world began the day we drilled the first commercial oil well, and we started utilizing the products from oil. Now, when you take our product and you realize we're so dependent on it, then you go, okay, was there anything to replace oil with? Is there an alternative energy? Is there something that if we wanted to remove oil from our lives, is there something that can feasibly do it? And the answer is no. And so you go, okay, well, there's nothing to replace oil with. Well, what about supply and demand? Well, right now we're running about 10, 15 million barrels a day short on what we consume versus what we produce. You say, okay, well, how's that looking in the future? Well, by 2030, they expect that to be 30 million barrels a day. Okay, well, if we're running at a deficit, well, are we putting enough money in to find more oil? Well, in 2014, we were investing right at $1 trillion worldwide in upstream development. Now we're going to be lucky to hit $300 billion this year. So we've dropped 70% in our exploration funds and what we're doing. So we have a product that is, heck, you hate to say it, but the world's addicted to it. So you have a product the world's addicted to. There's nothing to replace it with. We're using more than we produce, and we're not investing enough to find more of it. Well, I'm not a rocket scientist, but when you line all of those together, now you add the last piece of the puzzle, which made it, you hate to say beneficial for us, but look, everybody's in the oil business. Whether you want to be or not, you're in the oil business. And so if you're going to pay the prices at the pump every day, don't you think it would benefit you to find a way to make money in oil and get the flow of the money coming the other way? That way, at least you hedge it. And so when all this started happening, personally, I was a little conflicted about it. I was like, okay, hang on. I'm making a killing. My partners are making a killing. Do I feel right about that when everybody else is hurting so much? And then I started thinking about it. I said, well, you know what? Yeah, I do. Because if I can make my partners money in this environment when everybody else is hammering them, then line it up 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. I'm going to make my partners as much money as I can. Because now you add the last piece of the puzzle, and that's the true American oil industry. When COVID hit and prices crashed, and you asked the average American, hey, how did that affect the oil industry? 99% of the people would have said, oh, it's Exxon. Oh, it's Shell. Oh, it's one of the majors. They can handle it. Yeah, they could handle it, but they're not the ones that were hit.
Yeah.
The ones that were hit were your roughly 9,000 independent American oil producers that average 12 employees or less, that produce 83% of our oil, 90% of our gas, and drill more than 90% of our wells. Those were the companies that were hit. And so when all of that came together, it was April 20, 2020. That was the day the prices crashed. That was the